Welcome. I've been asked to make a short presentation during our Foundation to Year 2 staff meeting today. The focus of my presentation will be on selecting an evidence-supported practice using a decision-making framework by Spencer et al. 2012. As you are aware, we have a growing number of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, in our classes. We are all keen to support them in their learning journey by using best possible practices in an inclusive learning environment. To do this effectively, we need to answer the familiar who, what, when, where, how and why questions. There is much to consider. To unpack this, I'm going to provide you with a practical example of how a team I've been a part of have used a decision-making framework by Spencer et al. 2012 to decide upon an evidence-supported practice to support a 7-year-old boy diagnosed with ASD in my Year 1 class. In the first phase of the Spencer et al. 2012 decision-making framework, 3 crucial elements need to be considered when specific needs are being identified and evidence-supported strategies or practices are selected. Each element is integrated and linked with professional judgment. As the client is central to this process, I needed to start with my client, Jack. As you are aware, ASD presents in a heterogenic way from one individual to another. Needs are diverse, and as Trembath and Vervanti, 2014 explain, not all children will respond in the same way to similar treatments. I needed to understand Jack's individual traits and characteristics, strengths and difficulties, beliefs, values and attitudes. I needed to know what is important and relevant to Jack and his family as far as his educational needs are concerned. This strengthens professional judgment when deciding on goals and how to help someone attain them. How did I acquire this knowledge and understanding regarding Jack and his context? I adopted a team approach. This is a list of people I have collaborated with both directly and indirectly to broaden my perspective and deepen my understandings. In identifying the network of people involved, the importance of maintaining positive working relationships within a school community so information can pass freely in a culture of trust, openness and respect is evident. The accessibility of up-to-date documentation and the willingness of Jack's mother, school staff and outside professionals to share insight and information made this process easier. So what did I learn? Like all children, Jack has strengths and difficulties. Understanding both is beneficial when determining needs and the ways to address them. We can often use the strengths of an individual to help address areas requiring support. The next step in the decision-making process is to form a practical question. Based on my client knowledge and understanding and using professional judgment, what change or changes need to occur to help Jack achieve a relevant, worthwhile, positive outcome? During our literacy block on Mondays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, children are required to transition through 2 20-minute independent learning activities. Jack finds transitioning challenging. Even with pre-warning, he can become distressed, reluctant to move on, withdraws, refuses to engage and struggles to use his words. Adult support is often required to help him with this transition. This was also noted by an educational assistant. Once a specific need has been identified, a practical question can be formed. According to Spencer et al., A well-constructed practical question is one that defines the student, states the desired outcome, and includes main aspects of the setting. So, the practical question. What evidence-supported practice can be used to help Jack, a Year 1 7-year-old student with ASD, transition from one literacy task to another independently in his mainstream classroom? Practical question in mind, the team needed to consider the social validity of the question. Is this issue and desired outcome something Jack and those supporting him consider acceptable and of value? This is an important consideration as families, teachers and others supporting Jack are more likely to work collaboratively together to achieve the desired outcome if they all have a shared view of the stated issue. After careful consideration, the team validated the practical question for the following reasons. Helping Jack manage transitions independently has been successful in other school situations. Independent transitioning positively impacts his participation, learning and educational progress. When Jack is calm, he verbally communicates more clearly, he engages more readily in activities, appears happier and functions more independently. Successful transitioning strategies may be useful in other contexts. Jack's mother is keen for staff to work through transitioning issues with Jack at school, as effective strategies may be suitable for use at home. Now the practical question had been established and validated by the team. The next step in the decision-making process was to select a suitable evidence-supported practice based on the best available evidence. Why evidence-supported? Because we wanted to implement something proven to be effective to provide Jack with the best possibility of achieving a positive outcome. I referred to a matrix of 27 evidence-supported strategies and practices compiled by the National Professional Developmental Centre on Autism Spectrum Disorders 2014. These practices have passed strict systematic reviews meeting standards in research quality, quantity and consistency in attaining positive outcomes. Having this matrix helped me avoid sorting through the increasing number of unproven treatments that may be costly, ineffective, time-consuming and possibly harmful. The list of evidence-supported practices, however, is not to be used as a checklist one can randomly select from. You need to find a match between the profile values and context of the student and between the evidence and desired outcome. In other words, did the evidence show the practice was effective in achieving the targeted positive outcome for someone with Jack's profile in a similar school setting? If a perfect match couldn't be attained, we would need to use the best available evidence and adopt a best fit approach. Based on the suggestions of the Head of Teaching and Learning Support, the psychologist and an educational assistant who has worked with Jack from the time he commenced school, I began investigating visual supports with an activity schedule in mind. Bander and Grimmett 2008 describe an activity schedule as a range of photos, images or drawings arranged in sequence of daily routines or activities and displayed in various ways. For example, on a chart, desk, in a folder or book that the student can look at and follow. This is used to inform, direct and encourage independence in working through activities and routines. As an evidence-supported practice, would this be a way of helping Jack transition smoothly and independently? I had to consider, along with my colleagues, do the participants in the research studies match the age, ASD diagnosis, context and values pertaining to Jack? Is the evidence-based practice effective in meeting the desired outcomes stated in the practical question? How was the practice implemented in the research studies, and can this be replicated or adapted and implemented with fidelity in Jack's classroom? Do we have the resources, skills and time to implement, monitor and evaluate the practice and its effectiveness? Is this strategy or practice acceptable to the team? To help determine this, I once again referred to the matrix of 27 evidence-supported practices, as it highlights the age and category the various practices have been effective in targeting. Under visual supports, visual activity schedules met Jack's age and area of need. I then examined several research studies referenced in the report to see if a best fit could be made regarding the other elements mentioned. Several studies matched Jack's age, diagnosis and setting. One matched the subject area, context, literacy. The research studies addressed similar issues regarding behaviour during transitioning, reducing adult dependence on task behaviours and reducing time to transition. Each study resulted in positive outcomes that ranged from improved behaviour, increased independence and ease of transition. The next thing to consider were the methods used. This is important for, as Spencer et al. State, if practices are not adapted and implemented correctly, or in other words with fidelity, using similar methods and core elements outlined in the supporting research studies, the same positive outcomes cannot be expected. The methods in the studies varied, so I looked at core similarities. The 13 studies Banda and Grimmett 2008 reviewed, and the research studies reviewed by Seven, Reski and Mateson 2015 indicated they shared the following elements. When examining the effectiveness regarding the form of visual activity schedule used, Laquia et al. 2011 found no trends emerged. The student and context will need to be considered in this decision. From the methods described in the research, it was apparent we would have the resources necessary to construct a visual activity schedule and the time to put it together. I completed online training through the National Professional Developmental Centre on Autism Studies AFFIRM modules to ensure I had the skills needed to implement the practice with fidelity. This knowledge will be shared with my teaching partner and the educational assistants who support Jack. Suitable data collecting proformas were also obtained through this source and will be useful when monitoring and measuring the effectiveness of the practice. After briefly discussing these aspects with the Head of Teaching and Learning Support and my teaching partner, we agreed to implement the visual activity schedule next term. It will be in the form of a chart that we could attach by Velcro laminated photographic images depicting the type of tasks needed to be completed. This format meets Jack's skill level. It contains key elements previously listed. It would be portable, simple to make, adaptable, usable in different contexts, and others in the class would also benefit from using a visual activity schedule, making it socially acceptable. A baseline sample will be collected monitoring Jack's independent transitions prior to the introduction of the visual activity schedule and once it has been implemented. I have just provided you with a practical example of how a team I have been a part of has used the Spencer et al. 2012 framework to select an evidence-supported practice for Jack, a 7-year-old boy diagnosed with ASD in my Year 1 class. I needed to work collaboratively with a team, understand, determine, examine, select, adapt, and to be adequately prepared to implement the practice decided upon. The Spencer et al. 2012 Decision-Making Framework is a comprehensive guide to navigate a complex and integrated process. Its application within our school and its effectiveness relies on teamwork, healthy client-family professional relationships. Also, it relies on a shared commitment to implement, monitor and evaluate suitable evidence-supported practices with fidelity. Thank you for listening.